Call to order here. This is the regular meeting of the Shade Tree Commission of the Borough of Fairhaven. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. Due to the COVID-19 situation, this meeting is being presented through the Zoom meeting platform. Public participation for this March 2nd, 2022 Shade Tree Commission meeting is available by call and phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until the portion for public comments, questions and comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question, comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button. It will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was sent to the Asbury Park Press 2 times, the Star Ledger on January 28th, 2022, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Shade Tree Commission Secretary is directed to include the statement in the minutes of the meeting. Christy, can I get a roll call, please?
Vigani. She had mentioned she'll be absent. Gotti.
Here.
D'Angelo.
Present.
Hoey.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
McCabe. I saw him just join. Paolo.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. You stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag,
of the United States of
United States
America, to
and
the
to
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Did everyone have a chance to look at the prior minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the prior minutes?
Motion to approve.
Peter, thanks. It looks like Mike seconded that.
Second.
Great. All in
Yep.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Prior minutes are approved. All right. Jumping right in. Green Team and Eco Fair. Ms. Reed.
I think we were going to start with Mike tonight since he has.
Oh,
to go.
Absolutely right. I'm so sorry. Yeah, the chair reserves the right to change the order of the agenda. And yes, Mike asked if we could elevate the tree ordinance to the top. Thank you very much for the reminder. Mike, please go ahead.
Sorry, I have a RFH baseball meeting at 8, so I have to get on. So thank you very much for accommodating me. What do you want to discuss first? Do you want to discuss Arbor Day, or would you like to discuss the shade tree ordinance?
Your decision, your call.
All right, let's start with the ordinance. So I gave a copy or a Google Doc or gave access of a Google Doc to Christy for those of you in the Shade Tree Commission to peruse. It's basically a bullet point approach to how we're going to address the key issues in the tree ordinance. Basically, there are 5 key issues that I think, and Dave and I think that that we really want to address in the new tree ordinance. One is outlining what the prohibitive activity is, and potentially changing the diameter breast height requirements of a tree. Right now in the Fairhaven ordinance, the diameter breast height of what is considered a tree in Fairhaven is 10 inches. We're proposing that is decreased or lessened to 6 inches. We wanted to change the permit application fee changes, and the recommended changes that I quite honestly put arbitrarily in there are in there. We wanted to discuss the building footprint of what each lot entails and where trees could potentially be hazardous, whether you're building either a primary edifice or structure, or sheds, pools, driveways, and things of that nature. All those issues must be considered when building on a lot, in consideration of where the trees are and their root system. Potentially starting a tree escrow fund for monies to be put into a fund to be used by the town council and potentially by us in the Shade Tree Commission for planting of new trees to increase. So we finally have we can take a step forward and have a positive production of trees and shade in our town rather than a reduction as we have been over the past few years. It addresses the mitigation plan so that when trees are removed, there is a requirement, either a monetary requirement or actual tree requirement that needs to be, so that there is a replacement of trees on that lot or in town. And finally, protecting of trees, which was mentioned in this body, about how when there is building or changing of the property or building new structures on the property, that the existing trees are protected with appropriate drip lines and markers. So those are the major issues that we see that need to be addressed in the shade tree ordinance, or sorry, the Fairhaven tree ordinance. We had a minor discussion. Councilwoman Cole, Councilwoman Neff, Dave couldn't make it, but also the mayor, on discussing these issues and where we're going to go from there. Hopefully, I think it's our hope that it gets bounced around with Todd Leader, and then hopefully we can come and bring these recommendations to the council and hopefully get this going and get this changed, because obviously the longer we wait, the more potential harm or disservice to our town can be done without changing this ordinance.
Mike,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment. First of all, thank you. And thank you for the discussion we had, that you mentioned that we went through the bullet points and all the issues that we identified as core issues that we would like to see in the new draft ordinance. I'm not sure if you are aware of the discussion that took place in this previous council meeting about the Bradley Beach shade ordinance, shade tree ordinance. And I think it's important to introduce that here now, because it directly affects what we're gonna do going forward. Essentially, the feedback we got from our lawyer, Greg Cannon, was that Bradley Beach might be a good example of an ordinance for us to look at, because it deals with smaller lots similar to Fairhaven. Whereas, for example, we've been looking at the Rumson tree ordinance.
And Jackson.
In the case of Rumson, they have much larger lots. So if you remove, I don't know, 5 trees or whatever you do or require them to do, it doesn't impact building as much, or renovations of properties. And here we have a situation that if the lot is really small and you have a construction site, it's a lot harder to deal with that situation. So one thing that he highlighted, that Greg Cannon highlighted, was that we might really want to see the Bradley Beach example and follow that example as perhaps the base point from which to start. And it was my understanding, but Councilwoman Cole can confirm, that the way that ordinance is written is that the Shade Tree Commission also has powers over those trees, not just the public trees. So it changes the role of the Shade Tree Commission as well, in which actually you would have a role in approving those permits and those applications. So it's a significant change, but one that was proposed as potentially a much more effective approach. So I wanted to just mention that. I think we should, I know we want to have thought leaders input, but I thought after listening to that we might want to have Greg Cannon involved sooner rather than later, and have him discuss with us, with that maybe on a subgroup, doesn't have to be here, but on a subgroup, discuss sort of what elements are different, and whether that's something we want to consider and potentially adopt. And Councilwoman Cole, I don't know if you have any other comments on that, but I just thought that was important, that maybe we'll introduce that discussion now, because
I know that Mike is going to have to go soon. So I had a slightly different interpretation of what was said, but this all goes into the same chute. Greg Cannon is going to ultimately prepare a draft and then it's going to come back. So I don't know if we need to, Bradley Beach will feed into the notes that has been prepared and worked on and researched by the Shade Tree Commission and under Mike's and Dave's leadership, but there are a lot of other things that are going to feed in, and then we'll end up with our own ordinance that's appropriate for Fairhaven.
Right.
Greg's queued up. Greg is ready. He wrote the Bradley Beach ordinance, therefore it's a familiar template for him. It won't necessarily be Fairhaven's, but it'll contribute to his thinking on it. And but we'll get to review it, including the
Yeah,
Shade Tree.
but I thought it strategically was important just to mention that it was my impression that it gives different powers to the Shade Tree Commission, because before this, we were discussing that maybe the zoning board will have a role, that we are still discussing what that strategic role would be in approvals. But it brings back to the table, some of those discussions, David and Mike, that we had at the end of the year about what's the role of the Shade Tree, what's the role of the zoning board. I just wanted to tee that up because it goes beyond just Greg writing the ordinance.
Yeah.
It's a strategic decision.
Yeah, and I actually, I initially, I would say probably in the last year, I was hoping to kind of keep a lot of the decision making on private trees away from the Shade Tree Commission and push that to zoning. But upon further consideration, I'm open to it. So if some of that wants to reside, I would like to understand the scope of potential work a little bit more. But I also I kind of agree with the point that I'd like to move this forward to the next set of eyes who can. Whether that's, whether it is Todd or Greg or another subcommittee where we want to discuss it if we want to do a halfway step. But I think Mike has done a tremendous job at putting this together and getting our thoughts organized. And I just think it's time to get this off the Shade Tree plate and move it to the next step. And maybe we can figure out what that next step is right now and then move it forward.
Yeah, and this is just a framework of what Dave and I, and many other opinions, Councilwoman Cole, Councilwoman Neff, and other people who have been involved and interested. It's a framework of what we think are the key issues, because we can kind of get boggled down and hindered by the details of certain issues. But I think we feel that these are the key issues that should be addressed in the next ordinance. If we use Bradley Beach as a model, I have no problem with that, but I still think these issues should be addressed in our new ordinance.
Yeah, and I think it's very fair feedback from Mr. Ken in that dealing with Bradley Beach ordinance deals with smaller lots. Absolutely, let's take cues from that as well. Not really something I had really thought about before, but that actually does ring true here in Fairhaven. Yeah. So.
Yes.
So like kind of like what Mike's prepared is generally like the Shade Tree Commission's like suggestion as to what we'd like to see in the new ordinance. Now it needs to be kind of, I think, more formally written up and then voted on. So, but I know that's the cycle it's not going to be immediate. We're probably a couple months and meetings away from it being actually voted in and approved, right? Because it's got to go to the attorney. It's got to go
especially if we do have some of these strategic decisions to make as to where the responsibility resides for Shade Tree, for zoning, and whether there are any changes in the powers of the Shade Tree Commission as far as those approvals. My suggestion would be that we send this to Greg Cannon now, and we also send it to Todd Leader. So let him move forward, so that because Todd will have the perspective of the zoning that we've discussed, and he also needs to be brought into that discussion if there are any changes from the proposals of who does what in that process that we've been discussing in that workflow. And I would just forward it to both and then ask, essentially set up a meeting in which Greg has a chance to provide his feedback, and we can have this discussion both in terms of what the write-up might look like and what the strategy might look like. We might want to have that discussion, even if brief, in a subcommittee, which can be the same subcommittee, but making sure that Greg and Todd Leader are there. Yep. And just make sure that we're making that decision so that Greg knows how to write the ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, Todd was there last time. So what would be the next? Christy, would you be able to set that up for us? Kind of like the reconvening of the ordinance subcommittee.
Sure. What is your time frame that you're hoping to do this?
We want to put this on the next council workshop agenda,
which is the 28th. Okay.
And the workshop, yeah. Oh, what is the date?
March 28th.
I don't know if that's the next council.
No, the 14th. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
14th, then 28th.
So
Then the meeting has to
Those
be
are the next
week.
two.
The meeting would have to be next week. And
That's
then
fine.
I think we can put it on the workshop and then have the meeting first and make sure that we are ready for what we want to say, both in terms of what we're proposing as a draft and both of what we are proposing as. sort
Well,
of
let's just
direction.
back up a second. We're not proposing a draft. We're going to put it on workshop so the council can weigh in and establish consensus. From there, and what's going to be on the agenda is going to be all the notes that are coming out of Shade Tree Commission. Of course, the Bradley Beach, ordinance that was shared with Shade Tree and Greg Cannon brought up. That'll all be on the agenda. It doesn't necessarily need to be taken apart. Council will it's only to establish consensus around the general legislative intent.
Right,
From
and
there,
they would be
Greg,
looking
I'm just
for
going to
the-
finish reviewing the process because
Uh-huh.
whether there's a subcommittee meeting
Right.
and that you're able to make that happen before the council meeting, things can move quickly or slow. It's what I want to avoid is that we have a lot of meetings that don't necessarily lead anywhere. At this point, we have to get it through the process and on Greg's desk in order to get a draft ordinance back. And once that happens, that's going to come to you guys as well. And that's going to be at the council. We'll make sure Todd sees it so he can look for the stuff that's important to the land use boards. But even with this accelerated sort of two things going on simultaneously, we're still probably looking at close to 90 days.
That's
And
fine. I mean, Councilwoman Cole, the only thing I'm trying to make
Call
sure
me Tracy.
is that we put all the threads together because we had several discussions with Todd Leader, with the zoning board taking responsibility for a number of items because it was found that the shade tree should not have that responsibility. And those discussions took place around Christmas time. So we need to and he was not in that meeting that we were in just a few days ago. So we need to make sure that we are on the same page with those discussions with Mr. Leader with zoning. And now this new discussion and feedback from Greg Cannon is I'm trying to bring it here because I'm just trying to make sure that we're not in a situation, there's three lines of thoughts happening. They need to converge. And I want to make sure that we have at least had this discussion, even if it's by email, if we can meet, that we know that that's the discussion. So when we present this to the council, they kind of already know what we're going to be talking about, but that we make sure that everyone is on the same page as far as the questions, because there's some strategy questions that need to be answered. So that just want to make sure that we all not trying to delay the process by any means, just want to get all the parts put together.
So what is our next step? Is it
we need to move it out of Shade Tree into.
is it the kind of the informal subcommittee next?
If you want to do that step, I personally, I'll be there. I'll do whatever you want to do. I think you're talking about the powers of the Shade Tree Commission. I personally think you guys should hear appeals. I think you should manage the trust fund. I don't think it's an escrow. I think that could be handled at the land use boards, but the tree bank should be administered by the Shade Tree Commission.
That's fine.
And hear appeals. And that way you can also bring the tree expert in from time to time as you feel necessary. To me, that's a typical Shade Tree Commission.
How would?
Yeah, I just want to highlight what Tracy is saying, and just to all the commissioners on the shade tree is that it's going to be a wholesale change on how we approach things here in the Fairhaven Shade Tree Commission. Now, it is a significant change. It's something for you to consider. So just think about it. I don't want to bias anybody, but I do think it's a step in the right direction for this commission.
I would, like I said, I want to understand, and I agree with you, Mike. I want to understand the scope of work that's going to put on this commission. Is that going to be another hour each month of discussion? I know that people can become very passionate about private trees, so I'm a little concerned about how much commitment this is going to be for us. But I'm willing. I want to know, what do we hear now? What do you think how does that expand with the new ordinance? And really, frankly, how many applications are we going to need to hear each month? And that's
why I would suggest this discussion with Greg Cannon beforehand, because I just want to make sure the council doesn't make a decision without you having had a chance to think it through and understand it better. What is it that we're saying? Because once we're in the workshop, I'd like to make sure that we are kind of on the same page and we had time to think about it. and understand it. I'm actually supportive of what Greg Cannon is suggesting, but I'm respectful of your concern about how that changes the burden on the Shade Tree Commission potentially. And I think we should definitely have a discussion to understand what are we really talking about.
And I should have pulled the statute for you guys, but a commission by nature has powers and authorities. And so it is kind of unique that that was sort of stripped out of the Shade Tree Commission for reasons I wasn't here. I don't know why. But for example, hearing appeals, I think the council hears an appeal for a tree. What do you think, Galini, like 10 a year? I did look it up. At one point I had it, but anyway.
Yeah, I think the difference might be, and that's why we have to understand this better. The difference might be the council is listening to an appeal, but I'm not sure if what we're talking about is the Shade Tree Commission looking at every application.
Yeah, that might be a question for the construction office, right?
That's what I would like to understand better, because that's a very different burden than listening to the appeals at the council level, which are few and far between. So those are some of the questions.
This body would not handle permit application review. That's done by a
Tree expert, correct?
Done by a staff person, basically. In this case, it's somebody we hire a vendor, but we should define, I love your term, tree conservation officer. Nice. But whoever that person is, and right now it's Mr. Brooks, they would handle that. The only thing that falls through Mr. Brooks's process are appeals, because he doesn't have the authority to approve them. And so right now those go to council, which is odd. It's atypical, I'll say. But that should be heard here at the Shade Tree Commission, in my opinion. I mean, you guys, there's a Shade Tree Trust Fund. Do you know the balance of the Shade Tree Trust Fund has $6,505 in it? You know, like you should know that. You should administer that. That is so you can plan around it, and you should have a way to, refill that. And this ordinance would allow that, provide for a funding mechanism. It gives you the ability to actually do what you were established to do.
Yeah, and I think that's us kind of as a Shade Tree Commission growing up a bit, and I think that's fine. But I'm not worried about 10 appeals a year. I'm worried about 10 a month. So as long as we're somewhere closer to the former, I think we'll be okay.
I think it's sort of like every now and then you'd have one.
The new ordinance is probably going to increase the number, right? So I think we're going to. Let's just say it's 25% more. That's still really one or two a month at most.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not too concerned about that.
So Christy, could you try to maybe place a meeting on calendar? Can we, see if we can get Greg Cannon to maybe give us some views that we can share among us? This can, we can try to make this a 30-minute discussion. I know that Mike and David, you already put in a lot of time on this. And if we can't meet, then at least we'll discuss it by email if it doesn't work out.
Can I suggest next Tuesday, the 8th, if we're trying to do this before the 14th?
I have I'm not, you could do it without me too, but
I could do it during the day, but not at night.
Yeah, I'm available.
I could do it during the day. I can't imagine everybody's available during the day though.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm available.
I can do it between like 3 and 5. It's a small window, I'm sorry, but
like I could do like 4 o'clock.
I can do that.
That time works for me.
Okay.
Wow.
3 at 4 p.m.
That was too easy.
So
Hopefully the attorney.
Well, that's assuming that.
Yeah, Greg won't be able to meet.
Greg Cannon is available. If he's not, then there's no meeting.
All right. Well, look, just Christy, if you wouldn't mind just trying to organize that for that time. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll reconvene. But that's.
Did you want Todd at that meeting too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yes.
Sure.
Mike, I know you got to go. Is there anything else you wanted to add on this or the other subject?
No, that's basically it. If anybody has any questions on the commission, if you look at our bullet points and you feel like something needs to be changed, retracted or added, please let me know, email me, and I'd be happy to discuss it with you. Again, this is a living, breathing, dynamic thing, and we're always open to suggestions. So,
And it's been regarding Arbor Day. I know it's April 29th. We have another shade tree meeting between now and then. Is there anything you want to highlight now, or can we?
Yeah, the only thing is that we're full go on the library event for the Sickles age kids, and Joe Heath from Knollwood got back to me, so the poster contest is a go, and they'll be announcing it this month.
Outstanding. Mike, thanks again for all your hard work on the ordinance. I really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys. Sorry I have to leave.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, Mike. Good night.
Best to the baseball community.
Thanks.
All right, great. Before we move on, I mean, there's a lot of, I think this is a really exciting kind of like update for this commission. And, you know, I think that, you know, this is going to draw attention to, you know, our conversations and our involvement in towns, especially if we start to weigh in on private trees. Is everybody okay with that? I mean, I think it's a good thing for the Shade Tree Commission. It's probably a normalization of the responsibilities compared to other towns. So, you know, if anybody has any objections, please speak now. Good, excellent, great. Please do, if you haven't already, please do review the ordinance issues that Mike has summarized. I think adding those at a minimum would be a really nice win for the tree ordinance. And then, you know, layer on input from the attorneys, input from the council, input from the townspeople. It's going to be great. So good work, everybody.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Knowing we have probably a 90-day process ahead of us, and I'm not even sure how I feel about this, but how would you feel about recommending a 90-day moratorium?
I'm sorry, meaning what? Meaning like it's
a suspension of processing tree permit applications. How does that strike you guys? Carve out.
I don't like that, because I think that there's that involves too many different moving parts and boards, including zoning and planning, that would need to have the flexibility to make decisions based on what's presented to them each month or each meeting. I hear you, but let's work to get the ordinance updated as quickly as possible. And then, you know, if unfortunately between now and then a tree or two comes down that shouldn't have, that might just be the cost of doing business. But I think we're going to be in a better place going forward. 90-day moratorium on cutting down trees, I think, would be a tough pill to swallow for.
Maybe not the right way to start off change, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's let's wait till we hear.
Some people are in favor of it, but
there's plenty of people in favor of it, but you're gonna get some people out there that are like, how dare you tell me what I can do, you know? And so let's just wait till it's in the books as an ordinance before we make any changes.
Good. Okay.
Excellent. Anything else on the tree ordinance or on Arbor Day? Awesome, good work. Okay, back to Andrea, Green Team and Eco Fair.
So the spring, they're labeling it Spring Sustainability Fair, is going to be May 14th.
It's not the Eco Fair anymore.
There was a lot of debate, and I had to drop off at some point because it went on for a long time. But the naming of the fair is still up for discussion. But as of the date is going to be the 14th of May. They're aiming from a location perspective for it to be at Bicentennial Hall. If not, the backup location is at the Knights of Columbus. From I think 10 to 3 is the time frame they're thinking. Trying to make it super family friendly, kind of education oriented, but also games, activities, trying to get different groups within town to participate, whether it be the Scouts, us, etc. So I think, you know, time is not in our favor at the moment. We don't have that much time, but we do need to start thinking about how we want to present ourselves. Again, between education material, putting together an activity, a craft, a tree giveaway. But that's definitely something we need to start working on, probably this meeting and maybe a subcommittee, if you will, over the next couple of weeks to brainstorm. One thing
that comes to mind at the Bicentennial Hall is that tree. That is our bicentennial tree. I know that there needs to be some action as far as protecting that tree. And maybe we were gonna write a letter to the council to, just implore them to protect that tree when any changes and updates are done. None of the work's done at Bicentennial Hall, right? We're still,
Copy Facilities Committee,
okay.
the council and copy facilities, yeah.
Has any work been done? And is there an update on that, the Bicentennial Hall project? I can't even remember what it was. I'm sorry.
No, but it's already,
Monumental
the big
install.
trees in front of Bicentennial Hall have already been identified as trees to be protected. So that has been already discussed at the council level and at facilities and in separate emails. So we definitely should keep an eye on that. I know that you intend to write an email to say, the shade tree supports, protecting the tree. But it has already been said, by Councilman Rodriguez and Councilman McHugh, who are heading up facilities, that they've already identified that those large trees will be protected and will not be touched, even if there's a parking lot built there or whatever that might happen. So it's something we definitely should make sure that that happens and it's done properly.
Is there a plaque on those trees? Like a plaque identifying it as the Bicentennial tree?
I believe there's one on the tree that's on the north side of the property, but not the
Okay,
one.
well, I was going to
that's
suggest
near
if
the
there
park.
was no plaque, we should get a plaque. And
I believe there is. I can confirm that for you, though.
yeah, would you mind? And then, we could act pretty
Okay.
quickly for a plaque if we have to.
And I did, on the plaque topic, I did go to the store to talk about the cost and go through the detail. And this was for the big tree hunt tree that we identified.
Yep.
Just in terms of price range and size, there's so many different features, but the ballpark number you're talking for an outdoor plaque that would not go on the tree because you don't want to injure the tree, it would be put a stake in the ground, is around $500 to $600.
I think that's well worth it.
So also for the big tree as well, I didn't proceed with anything, but I have all the detail from the woman. What I said I was going to do is I was going to go back to the park and try and match everything to the existing plaque that's at the park, which has the whole history.
Mhm.
And then she could come up with the font, the color, and all of that. But that's the kind of the next step is just to agree that we're willing to fund that one plaque. Again, in the ballpark of $550.
It seems like an operating cost of the town as opposed to the Shade Tree Commission, but
And that's the other question is who runs the invoice? Because depending on whether it comes from the town, the shade tree, there's different protocol that needs to be followed in terms of ordering it as well. So that's something just to formalize.
If you
and
want the
Krista may know.
town to buy it, oh, sorry, Andrea. If you want the town to buy it, you could submit it as a requisition, and then you'll either get turned down or approved. You'll probably get approved.
And who do I submit that to?
You can send it to me and put Lilini on there as a email, and then Teresa.
Okay. Okay, I'll do this for
But
this. Will be
it's
for the big
basically
tree
the
hunt, and then if we want a second one, we would handle that separately.
yeah, if you want to watch a movie.
And I would just say, maybe the letter can simply say, we're happy to hear. It sounds like the trees, just something to, if there could be some formal communication from the Shade Tree Commission around that, I think would be a great way to kind of.
I'm sorry, I distracted by one of my kids for a
Oh, we
second.
got this, the conversation started with a letter that was going to come from Shade Tree about the fate of the tree to the south.
Yep.
And then we veered off into some other stuff, which was useful, but I just wanted to suggest that it might be good, even just as a matter of record, that the Shade Tree Commission has a position on it.
On the Bicentennial Hall tree.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Both. of them.
Where do we land on the plaque and the requisition?
Andrea was going to go ahead and put something together and submit it. If you have a cost, you could put it together. It's a simple email that just references the cost, the purpose, copy. Obviously, you should put the chairman on there and send it in as an email.
I'll do that.
Great. Thank you.
You mind circling back to the fair for just 1 second before we move on? I just wanted to point out, and I know that this isn't headed up by the Shade Tree Commission, but May 14th is the Dermer Dreams food drive, which is of course a huge ordeal in town. So I don't know if there's any flexibility on that date or if you just want to go for it, but you know.
Did we just have one of
kind
those?
of
Is
a
that
big
twice a
event.
year? Is that twice a year?
Twice a year, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it could,
So, yeah.
it could, I mean, so it could also be a good opportunity potentially, just with people out and about, if you want to make a stop en route from bringing bags to and from. I don't know. I mean, I will raise it, and I'm not sure if it was discussed, but no, it's good to know that, yeah, you don't want competing things obviously happening. But
Right.
potentially we could make it a positive thing where, again, it's if people are out doing things, because we did talk about activities and sports and times and weekends, and everybody's view was there's so much going on, it's so hard
True.
to,
Yep.
but I will bring that up with Kelly just so she's aware and figure out to make sure that logistically we make it feasible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I guess, and then in terms of next steps, we just need to, again, think about how we want to present ourselves. What is it we want to do? Do we want to do a craft? Do we want a game? Do we want education material printed? It's a good opportunity to get Shade Tree's name out, let people know what we're doing in town. So, you know, we kind of got 2 months to make it happen.
Andrea, I'll connect with you
Yep.
offline about this, and we'll put some ideas together.
Okay.
I may have some pamphlets that we gave out years ago when we did the tree giveaway in front of the bulk, you know, when we do the bulk trash and we did the tree giveaway, we had some pamphlets that I think they're in my attic. I gotta find them. It's been a few years. But I can run one.
Whatever is available, just to
You look and
start.
see. You want to use those?
So we're going to basically be kind of figuring out whether we want to have like a pamphlet, some sort of like mission statement update for so people understand what we do, or an activity, like tree related activity, shade related. What would that be? We'll have to brainstorm.
Yeah, and I
Shady
think you want
tree
it to be both,
activities.
right? You want it to be fun, so it piques people's interest, as well as, and here you go, here's some education material while you're having a little fun. So if we could find a way to mix the two in together. And again, maybe it's a raffle for a tree giveaway. Maybe we, you know, maybe
There you
we
go.
do a raffle.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, put your number down, but at the same time, here, take this information. So it's something to think about.
That's a great idea. The raffling off a couple trees, I think, is a I think the not necessarily the cherry tree kind of concept that we're thinking about for Fairhaven Road, but some other flowering ornamental, some dogwood or something like that that's native can be, you know, we can think about that as well.
There's one food for thought. You could think about something like a did you know? Did you know what, like, for example, the role of an oak tree in the ecosystem, which has a very unique and beneficial role. It could be
Yeah.
interesting to showcase one tree, how many bugs live there, and what those bugs are food source for, and how those, you know, pollinators help with your fruit, like connect it so that people get that there's the role of a tree actually.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of highlighting a oak and what that one singular oak does.
Maybe bring the Salem oak, showcase it on the
Right.
table.
I gotta make sure that thing's okay.
So everyone can breathe on it.
Yeah, let's get away from my Salem oak. No, I'm kidding. I know that thing is okay. I've been looking at it all winter. I moved it to a place that was protected from the wind, but it was still able to get sunlight and precipitation. So I'm confident that we're coming out of the winter in good shape. So it doesn't look much more than what it did last year. So still a wisp.
They grow slow.
But see what we could put it next to what an actual what the oak is on at the end of Hance, right? That would be
Yeah.
the before and after photo. How it starts, how it's going. Okay, all right, Andrea, you and I will connect to figure out what we can do. I love the idea of a raffle. I actually really love the idea of what an oak did you know might look like.
And then just the other thing from the green team is still Sustainable New Jersey. I've been lacking on my side moving that forward. I will be focusing on the hazard tree piece. I know Kelly said we have a June date, I believe, to submit everything for the next iteration of trying to move us up to silver. And I know she's working with the environmental committee as well to try and get help to get as many points as possible. So that's something, again, holistically as a team here, we should go back and review I think there were 4 specific items within Sustainable Jersey where we have a touch point. And Christy, I will loop back with you because I do need to request some information on the hazard tree, which I have not done yet.
Sure.
Okay.
Let's see, I'm just looking while Andrea's got the mic. I think that is all of your projects. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, going back to, well, anyone have any questions or comments on all that? Okay, great. I'm gonna go back to item B, social media. I know Leah's not here. Kristen, have you and Leah been in touch on any sort of social media ideas?
We have, and I actually think based on last night's town council meeting, and then the event, the Arbor Day, well, Arbor Day for sure, but then the event we were just talking about, there's a lot of good content in there that we could probably do some marketing around. So whether it's the oak trees or, Dave, you sent us something on the spotted lanternflies last night at the town, or 2 nights ago at the town council meeting. We got a really great education on some of the invasives in the natural fields area. So I think, and then obviously big events between Earth Day and Arbor Day, we have a lot coming up. So she and I will sit down and put pen to paper and put some sort of plan in place. But I think, again, more the better. So if you have other ideas, please send them through. But I think we have a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, the invasives, and I did not listen to the council, but the invasives obviously is one of those things that's always kind of a bubbling under the surface problem that we don't really have a home for. I did want to compliment the homeowner on Hance between Knollwood and Nativity. There's that big tree right on the street, and they did a great job at cutting the invasives up, 6 or 8 feet, but not ripping it off, which damages the bark. Whoever that homeowner is did a fantastic job. And because every time I drove past that, after I learned how bad the invasives were for the trees, I always kind of made a mental note that we should really try to educate that person on what so kudos to them for hearing.
Well, gold star for Dawn Marie, and I forgot her husband's last name, Cardiello. That's the family that lives there.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, gold star for them for sure. But yeah, Kristen, any ideas you guys have that you'd like to post, please go right ahead.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank
Kristen,
you.
I was just going to add that I did some work on spotted lanternflies at the end of last year.
Oh, great.
Communications, not the actual flies. And I will,
You're reading them?
I'll forward those to you.
Sure. Yeah, I'll reach out to you, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the spotted lanternfly thing is kind of, it's timely. My understanding is that this is when their egg sacs are really like obvious, but also very vulnerable, and like it's a good timing to get rid of them.
Right.
So yeah, please feel free to kind of put that forth.
I'll connect with you.
Okay. Any questions on social media, comments? All right, moving along. Jill, tree inventory.
Right. So I have just a short update this time. Right now, where we are is we just kind of settled on what I would now call the scope of the project. And so with that, like more clearly defined, I'm going back and forth with the people that I originally spoke with, the 4 vendors, to make sure they clearly get what we're looking for, and then also just getting them some information that they need in order for them to come back with the proposal. With that said, as this document becomes a little bit more live, I'll forward it to the commission so you could take a peek at what's going on. But that will also be something that we'll be able to send out to additional vendors, just so that we could get a nice assortment of proposals. So that's really like where I am right now with that. And hopefully I'll have a little bit more of a more concrete update next time.
I know this is a heavy lift. Thank you very much. This has been, I think, a lot of work, a lot more work than people realize. So Jill, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any questions, comments, anyone?
I just want to say thank you, Jill. The amount of time you put into it, and I haven't had a chance to in the last few days, but I will look at those vendors as well, just for curiosity to see the kind of work that they do. But thank you so much.
I think I would appreciate your feedback on that. I know that's kind of up your alley. So.
Moving along to line item E, the Kwanzaa cherry tree giveaway on Fairhaven Road. Peter, how are we doing on this?
Yeah, so I spoke with Bill Brooks since our last meeting. Very helpful. He's a font of knowledge. That was the first time I spoke with him. He's excited to help us out. He raised a few additional points for us to consider. He suggested we consider other trees before moving forward. I think we can discuss among us if we want to do that or not. He talked about natives. He mentioned that the Kwanzaa cherry tree would be a fine tree for the area. You know, he said it seems to like it here. It certainly has shown itself to do that. And I guess there is he mentioned a list of recommended trees on the Red Bank Shade Tree Committee website, which I looked up. So there are some other species we could consider. We talked about the risk of having a single species, but we kind of went back and forth on that. And he sort of said, if we were getting the effect we wanted, it's probably worth the risk given that we're spreading these trees out and we're not going to concentrate them all in one area.
Yeah, the risk is that, it's for everybody, for everybody's understanding is like, if we have like some, if we plant only cherry trees and then 10 years from now, there's like a cherry tree blight, then you wipe out all the trees that we've planted. Bill had initially suggested kind of a variety approach, and like, you could go with, flowering ornamentals in a variety, pick 3 and do it. But I kind of think like, look, if we're going to just start with 10 trees,
yeah, right,
and spread it all the way down, find the 10 best spots on Fairhaven Road.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with the risk, I think.
Yeah. And
otherwise, I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that.
Peter, I would love to walk down the street with you and knock on some doors of neighbors to talk to them about it. I think this is a great idea. And I think maybe that's something that people will really embrace. I did want to point out that the construction right next to me on Fairhaven Road, the 2 new homes going up here, there was one last tree that looked in really bad shape that had to be taken down as they built the sidewalk. So now there's a sidewalk that has been built that is, that brings you further into the Fairhaven Fields area. I do wonder if we should talk to the builder and find out, since there's literally not a single tree now in front of those 2 new homes. It's right here by 300 Fairhaven Road.
Okay.
I wonder if that would be an opportunity to see if they would be interested in participating and maybe fund it themselves, at least 1 tree or 2 for those new homes. So I just wanted to share that thought. And I do know that the neighbor across from me was in one of the calls of the shade tree and said she would be happy to put one in her property as well. So I just wanted to mention that maybe that gives us a little bit of a starting point. And we're right at the end here, right next to the cherry trees. So
yeah,
just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point. I think I think last meeting we had talked about just kind of like thinking about it for a month, and then this meeting deciding on whether we want to just put, I guess the process is to put a requisition in for 10 trees, and that can come out of the Shade Tree Trust. I know that we have, like we said, $6 grand, so happy to spend that on trees. I think Peter, you had some low cost estimates that were pretty low anyway. I love the idea of asking the builder, now that do they feel the need that they want to replace, now that the construction is near the end, would they want to contribute to the beautification of Fairhaven Field?
Maybe we should show up en masse, all of us, and then ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Very
just think
nicely.
it
Yeah,
doesn't hurt to ask for it, and see if maybe there's a willingness to do it. So and then we don't have to fund those. I think a couple of people might be willing to. I might put one in my property and I'll fund it myself. So
who is the builder? Do we know? I'm sure you know.
I would have to go next door and find out.
If you get me the builder name, I'll happy to make the call and be like, look, this is Dave from the Shade Tree Commission. I'm just inquiring if you would be interested in at your cost planting a tree or 2 or 4.
And it was my understanding he's local. So okay, we'll follow up separately.
Yeah, that's fine.
Are they supposed to plant a tree? Are there any requirements as to what they're supposed to replace or anything?
I would have to look. I do know that there was a whole plan that was put together and presented to the planning board. And I don't know the exact requirements, but there was 1 tree in the front that was remaining, and honestly, it looked in terrible shape. But I do know that they just put the sidewalk, and the people who built the sidewalk told them to take down the tree. There was no way to save it. It was literally on the way of the sidewalk, and this was just last week. So I'm not sure how
Sidewalk
that
can go
impacted it.
around trees, FYI, you guys. Sidewalks curve. They can go around like,
So
Yeah,
that was,
I think in
that
that
partic-
case, it was in such bad shape and it was so much on top of it. They were told to take the tree down, but so I'm not sure, number one, if they have to replace that tree, that's a question. But the fact is, there's nothing in front of those two new homes, and I could see something really beautiful going up. We could, doesn't hurt to make a phone call. And
Yeah,
ask if there's some willingness, and also I think more people might decide to help, so you might end up with more than 10.
so what, just so I know, like, what tree should we suggest that they plant? Kwanzaa cherry?
Well, that's the question. I mean, we can just go with Kwanzaa cherry. It seems like that is not a bad tree to plant around here. It's probably a good tree to plant around here. We frankly don't have to make it more complicated and dig into, other options, especially if we're doing, if we're starting with 10. It doesn't mean that we can't frankly diversify later. So maybe in the interest of time, we just push forward with that tree, given its track record here, and we move forward. I think
Okay.
if we plant an appropriate tree that we have 10 of them growing in the town, then I think that's a win regardless.
I'll
I was
definitely,
just like, I think that just to even add to that is that this whole idea of the Kwanzaa trees and that the ones that are in existence, we're going to have a replacement plan. I think by adding these new ones, it almost like confirms our commitment to keeping that look going along Fairhaven Road, so that when we say, every other tree has to come down and we're going to replace it, we have kind of like something backing us up saying, yes, but we are committed to making sure that, we're replacing them and it's going to like maintain this iconic street look. I don't know. I think there's something to that, to kind of just committing to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
that's fine.
agree with that.
Kwanzaa it is. So in addition to whatever the builder, what his appetite is for this, I would like to buy 10 Kwanzaa cherry trees. So how can we get the word out? Fairhaven Road. I mean, Peter, you said you identified maybe 30 some odd spots. Do we want to, could you pick 10 that seem to be the most obvious? And maybe you and Councilwoman Neff can pick the 10 most obvious, and then
Just knock on the door, I would suggest.
yeah, no, I think let's pick the 10 spots, and then let's buy the 10 trees, and let's try to get them planted in the spring cycle. And we can identify the addresses, and we can either write a letter or knock on the door.
Do you
Sure.
have an agreement with these prospective property owners to sign, to commit to watering and care for this new tree? Is that part of?
No, but that should be.
Yeah.
That
I think we should
be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this should be planting and some coaching on nurturing. I think we can't do it without that. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of unhappy looking trees.
Yeah.
Is my guess.
I don't want to make it a lot more complicated, but one item that was raised that I did not mention here, but I should, since this has come up now, is whether do we want to plant these trees on the right of way, or do we want to ask the homeowner if they would like to plant it a little further into their property? The reason I'm asking is that as long as it's on the right of way, I guess it's the responsibility of the town to keep, to essentially keep the tree going and possibly remove it if there's a problem, possibly replace it. I don't know if there's any merit for us to worry about that, but I just wanted to mention that as something that had been mentioned to me as something we might want to consider.
So we discussed this when we kind of came up with the idea of the tree giveaway that we worked through last year. Chris Larson and I had talked, extensively on that subject. Where we landed was that we think it's best and cleanest if it is not in the right of way. We don't want to burden the DPW with future maintenance and or work. I think that if you're going to be the recipient of a nice, beautiful free tree, I think it's okay to ask that you commit to maintenance of that tree. And I can't imagine we get much pushback on that, because I think most people will have, a sprinkler system that's in place that, I don't know. But I personally think it's best when we are giving them a tree that they then have planted in their own private yard, and it becomes their own tree. But then again, if we're changing the tree ordinance to to include,
I just want to ask, I'm asking the question because I also want to make sure we're asking them to plant it in the front, right? In their front
yes,
yard,
in the
so that we have the look that we are trying to accomplish.
Yep.
So it's their property, but it's in that front part of the property.
Do we want to like suggest a uniform, distance back from the center line of the street?
Maybe if we are looking for a certain look, we might want to give some of those things consideration.
Yeah, because you don't want like a patchwork of, forward and back.
You have power lines on the west side of Fairhaven Road. So that alignment, you just want to factor in growth.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so if there are power lines, then it would be better if they were closer to the house, correct?
Well, if it's supposed to be a street tree, which is I think where the discussion was going, there's a certain look that you want to achieve. And so if they're all in the same line, wherever that line is, you don't want it to be too far off the sidewalk, but maybe far enough so that the peak of the canopy doesn't hit the power lines, so that when you do have to trim them, 2 decades from now, that it doesn't drastically alter the growth habit of the canopy.
Maybe I could run that by Bill. And
Yeah, that's great. Peter, if you wouldn't mind running that by Bill, he would give us some good guidance on that. That's great.
Yeah. And then just to set expectations, and I don't know if it was my conversation with Bill or otherwise, but there was some skepticism as to whether we can source and plant a tree in the spring at this point. So I don't know, but I'm glad to do it in the spring. I think that'd be a whole lot more fun than planting in the fall, but
Yeah.
I think that was just feedback I got. So, and I don't remember if that was Bill or somebody else I spoke with. But I'm.
If you wouldn't mind asking him that as well.
Yeah.
If you're David, I have to apologize. I do need to leave. As I had mentioned, I apologize to the group. I do have to leave at 8:30 now. But this has been a great discussion. Thank you all so much. This is really great work. It's a great agenda that this team has.
Yep, we're getting a lot of momentum here. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time, Councilwoman F. Thank you very much.
Good night, Ladini.
All right, guys, we're getting down to the last bits of it anyway. Well, before we open to the public. So Sportsman Field East, I have no updates there. Chris McCabe, anything on the Fairhaven Natural Area Firewood Project?
Yeah, I talked with Chris Rodriguez last night about it, and we are trying to connect with the natural area people. The commission, I guess Chris Rodriguez talked to the council last night about it. They were in favor of it, he said. And it looks like it's going to go from the 2 cleanups that they do to 4, and then we'll try to incorporate it that way. But we're trying to connect with the other committees now, just so that we know it's their area. I don't want to just plan something, it's their area, so I need their approval and everything. And so I'm waiting to hear back from those guys. And
Great.
That's where we stand with it. But it should be. I don't think there'll be a problem. Chris said that the scouts would be eager to support it as well, and so there's progress. It's just I'm waiting for the other committees to get back to me.
It's great.
Can you give me 30 seconds on what this is? I don't remember this coming up last night, but I also remember I'm confused about what it is.
Yeah, we're just trying to. There's a huge amount of fallen trees and things in the natural area that we're looking at. When we did the cleanup, there were a lot of people that were looking for firewood that thought, they were putting it near the entrance and coming back and getting it. And it just seemed like a layup to do it more often and let people in town go and basically get firewood and clean up the area at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that was the impetus for it. And it's gaining traction. Everyone thinks it's a good idea. It's just, I had to get the council to decide on it, hear about it, and then now it's just the other two committees, and then we'll pick dates and put it out there.
So I can carry that to the engineering and DPW meetings that Mike McHugh and I have with Rich and Teresa.
Okay, I thought Chris was the liaison. That's why I reached out to him. I mean, he was a good contact because he was the
Right.
shade tree as well. And but either way, anyway, I mean, I just
No, tell as many people as you can. I'm just offering to continue to advance it in other ways that I think may help you.
that would be great. I appreciate it. Any help I can get.
You got it.
Yeah, people love firewood here in town. And there's, you know, and I for one love the smell of the natural wood fire. So you can count on me for participation.
I don't actually have a fireplace that I can use.
I have a fire pit.
So
Yeah, we have the house we moved into has a gas fireplace, and I don't love it.
I love it when it's done, you know, when I turn it off and it's clean and
Yeah.
All right, moving along. No date yet for the big tree hunt in 2022, but again, it should be around May 1st. So I'll keep you posted. I keep checking. And then finally, I had hoped to hear from Bill Brooks on the DPW's plan for the tree giveaway. The homeowner on Hance who won the 2 trees. They were going to be Liberty elms, and Bill might have suggested something very similar, another elm, but I can't remember which one it was. But no, I keep continuing to try to get a date and a process pinned down. So I guess, Christy, we've talked a couple times tonight about, you know, buying trees and you know, from the shade tree, like is there and this is what I wanted to learn through the tree giveaway is like, what is the official process of getting a check written? Do I email you requesting money from the Shade Tree Trust? And then I kind of like, what happens next if we're buying 2 trees? Does that go to the DPW for that? Does that, like,
I don't
how does
know
it
if the
actually
trust is
collect this?
different, but in order for the borough to make any sort of payment, first we need the vendor on file, and to have the vendor on file, we need their W-9 and business registration certificate, and then we could set them up as a vendor and go through the requisition process. And for that, we would need an invoice, which I think Tracy alluded to before, which would go to this assistant CFO, and that would be confirmed or denied. So those are some ducks and then, you know, nothing can be purchased until we have all of those items in a row.
Exactly what you said.
So I guess find the vendor that you're looking to purchase from, and then we can get all the necessary paperwork from them to get them set up. And this goes for plaques, everything. I mean, you know, a lot of people are already in our system, of course, if they've ever, you know, been paid by the borough in the past. But if they're a new vendor, these are just some things. I just went over it with another commission, but that would get how you get started. The trust might be different, so we can speak to the assistant CFO, Nancy, about that and how that would be different. So you're talking about pulling the funds from there for these quads cherry trees?
With that, and yeah, and then last year's tree giveaway, we had committed to buying it out of the Shade Tree Trust, which should be another few $100s or what have you.
Okay, she's actually out this week, but on Monday I will discuss with her if the process is any different and get you the steps that you need, or
Thank you.
so that you can move along.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
No more project updates on the agenda. Does anybody on the existing agenda items, does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Do we, is there a possibility of doing like a raffle or doing something like that, maybe to try to fund some of the Kwanzaa cherry trees? You know, or a sponsorship or something along those lines?
Yes, I think at the formerly known as Eco Fair, then currently known as Spring Sustainability Fair, we are talking about having a booth and a raffle there. Very happy to have the raffle fund the cherry tree purchases, but what's fortunate, and what I think the better use of the raffle is is for the funds not to be earmarked for any specific project, but to go into the Shade Tree Trust and say, for projects such as these three things that we are working on right now, so to get the word out that the Shade Tree Trust is something that we are trying to, did you know that your community appeal funds go into the Shade Tree Trust? Did you know that the Shade Tree Trust then, funds purchases of the tree giveaway, the shade, the blah, 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 the tree. So I think, a raffle, I think is look, I mean, I think we have struggled with funding in the past. I think that's going to change a little bit with the new ordinance, but I think that any money into the coffers that can then go toward increasing the canopy, I think is a good goal to have for this group. So, yeah.
If we're gonna do a raffle, we need to get a license for that.
I know.
Yes.
But maybe you could just do it as,
What about the benches? Remember didn't people like have the ability to buy benches in town or something, sponsored benches or something? I thought we
yeah.
did that at one point. Maybe the tree, maybe some of the bonsai trees that we're planting, they could, it could be for someone, or they could pay for the, it'd be their sponsored tree or something,
Yeah. And I mean, if you get a raffle, you could get it. It's like the license lasts a year usually, if you kind of earmark what you want to do. So I don't know how fast.
Have you ever done it? How long does it take?
I've never initiated one, but I feel like you probably could get one. Let me find out. I could find out how long that takes. I'm doing it for a booster anyway, so.
There might be a workaround. I've been, ever since somebody was talking about it, I was like, oh, what can we do? You might be able to have just like a donation jar.
You could do that. It's just if you're doing the raffle, it's like the gaming list.
Exactly,
basically.
that's a gaming thing.
Yeah.
But
It's
if
a
you
50-50, doesn't that?
think
That
that's
requires a
around
license.
license, yeah.
No, that you definitely need a license for 50-50.
You do.
And if we're taking donations, that might even trigger another thing. But maybe there's, why don't, Christy, why don't you and I, let me try to find a workaround for you guys, so that we don't have to do the licensing thing. I'm thinking that might take too long. What do you think, Joe?
The legalized games of chance that once you submit the paperwork, it's a 2-week turnaround. But in order, I think, to even submit the paperwork, you have to be a registered something.
Not-for-profit.
I'll talk to Allison about that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try to work with you and see if we could come up with a way for you. You want to, in some way, collect donations and engage people in helping to fund the canopy, right? That's the goal.
I think you could, I think we talked about this last time briefly, like we could sell things, but that's so much more work. So
That's right. We were talking about the t-shirts, like with the Lorax on it,
right,
right?
like you could, you don't, but a 50-50 or taking donations is, easier.
Yeah, let's see what we can figure out. We'll have to get back to you before. Who wants, Andrea, should we get back to you since this is for that event? Okay.
Just one question on the shade trees funds. So when we're paying for permits to remove a tree, is that money going into the shade tree fund or no? Because it's not correct. Okay.
No, but the shade tree budget, technically the Shade Tree Commission has a budget of about $12,000 a year. And that money is used to pay for consultants. That's the line item. And the consultant in this case is most often Bill Brooks. So it's, even though you're a commission and you're somewhat separate from that consultant, technically, when I pull the budget for Shade Tree Commission, it's about $12,000 a year, separate from the trust fund, and Bill's fees are paid out of that budget under Shade Tree Commission, which is another reason to just consolidate this. Bill can come into a commission meeting from time to time, because every now and then, like things came up tonight. It makes sense so that you can know the budget, you can see the work that's going on, the few appeals that do come up would rightfully come. It would house everything much more neatly and appropriately with the commission.
Yep, I agree.
The trust fund, however, yeah, okay.
All right, guys, in the interest of time, I do want to kick to the public shortly, but just I want to jump ahead to the proposed new agenda items. We kind of really touched on them both already. I think education around some of the things that damage trees is a great topic for social media, Kristen. I know that we already talked about this, but invasives and spotted light decline education. Let's be sure to prioritize that for social media feed. Does anybody want to put anything else on the new agenda items, for next week or next month rather? Because other than that, I'd like to go to the public participation. Great. All right. Christy, I see one hand raised.
Yes, we have one hand raised, and if anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand. I'm going to bring Bonnie Torsidia over.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hello.
Speaking of the Lorax.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'll try to be brief. So the plaque is 1976 because it's the bicentennial. There is a plaque. I've taken a picture of it and sent it. So that's kind of a special thing, and I really hope that they kind of highlight it and make sure everybody can see that in front of Bicentennial Hall. A couple things, like I really hope at the whatever it is, the Eco Fest, Green Fest, Sustainable Fest, whatever we decide on, that you do some tree education and encourage people to plant trees on their own. I mean, I know it would be great if you did a raffle, but I think what people don't understand is that our trees all over our state are aging, and we need to start planting more, because it's the new trees that are growing that are taking up the carbon. And maybe you do a whole education on why are trees so great? They take up carbon, they combat climate change, they store our stormwater. They feed the insects, the wildlife, they shade us, they bring the expense of our homes down. I mean, there are so many benefits. There are mental health, if nothing else, walking in a forest. I mean, I think it would be great if you really showed people the value of our trees and something like that.
Bonnie, would you be interested in being at the booth? No, I'm not even kidding.
I
was
know.
thinking of you as we were talking about how great oaks are. I know that.
I know.
A passion project for you. I would.
I know.
Love
I'm actually putting together a PowerPoint right now for my garden club on oaks, which maybe if it ends up, I'll share it with you. But unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town on the 14th. I am so upset about this. They scheduled it and I had a trip already planned, but unless I can cancel that. But I would love to be involved, because it is my passion. And I just have two other things. The Kwanzaa cherry trees. So I know you love them, but 20 to 30 years is a really short life for a tree. And you're saying that they're up against the end of their life. Why wouldn't you try to plant a tree that's going to live for 100 years and continue to grow and be a beautiful part of that street? I'm just not sure why. I understand that you want to keep it the way it's always been, but those were planted before people realized the importance of native plants and native trees. And I'm just wondering if you might think about.
Well, that's fair. It's fair commentary. I do think that we are trying to go for the right tree, right place mindset. And I love tall canopy oak trees. Is the right place for a tall canopy oak tree on the same, like 10 feet away from power lines? And I don't know that is the right spot. I mean, I do want them, but I feel like they're more appropriate when there is no power line there. That said, I think that we're open to the idea of native flowering trees that might complement.
There are a lot. There are a bunch of them. So maybe you think about that.
Earlier, I think you heard us talk about how we were hesitant to pick one tree and go with it because of the diversification impact. But then again, with 30 plus identified spots on the street for trees, like very unscientifically, Peter, I think that was Peter's term, I think that we will have an opportunity to then maybe pivot to another flowering tree. But I think just to get the project rolling, I think we want to just start with some consistent success that seems to work on that street. And that's kind of where my head's at on it. I don't really know. I aspire to have a true towering shade tree drive at some point where it is kind of oak focused. But I just
Well, you
think
have that over in your neighborhood. There are lots of beautiful big oaks. So we have, we do have our lanes with big oaks. So it's not that you have
but
to do
I
that.
want that, to your point about, our aging, tree resource. I do want to, I do want to plant those throughout the rest of town as well. So I just think that we're trying to start by starting with any sort of tree planting. That's something that we have not done as a shade tree commission in the 2 years that I've been on it. So I'm really trying to get some trees in the ground. We've got a lot of momentum on some of the other more official stuff, whether it's the ordinance and the inventory, things like that. But at the end of the day, I know the mayor's committed to being a net positive from a tree planting standpoint. I think this is a start. And so I don't want to interrupt the momentum. Because at the end of the day, I don't think the Quonset trees are going to be bad in any way. I think you're right. They might have a 30-year life expectancy, but is it a bad decision to plant Quonsets?
Well, they're a Japanese tree. They're not they're not a native. That's I understand what you're saying. And maybe if we just plant, I even think McCarter Park needs there is somebody planted like 7 new oaks right in the front of the park, but I think that needs to be a concentrated effort. And I actually think kids could be encouraged to collect the acorns there and do some sort of project, and then they would be involved and it would inspire them. But it's trees. You don't plant trees for yourself. You plant them for the future. That is the message. It's a giving thing. It's you're not going to see what a 100-year-old oak's going to look like. Anyway, I'm thrilled with the way you're moving. I love it. You guys are all doing such a great job, and yay. We're like, the trees are actually important now. I'm a little bit worried when Tracy brought that 30-day moratorium. I'm almost afraid that they know that something's in the works and everybody's going to start cutting down trees really quick, like in the next 30 days or whatever. Or I'm just a little bit afraid of what's going to happen. But
We'll keep our eye on it. I know it's a tense time in a way, because we had some I think maybe some of you guys know about 32 Fisk, the clear cut property across the street from the police department. It actually got elevated to the council. So there's, I think everyone's paying attention as best we can, Bonnie, and maybe even a little bit better than we ever have, I think is fair to say. And we're going to work as fast as we can. That's why it's going to come out of the commission tonight, and it's going to go to council as quickly as possible and simultaneously off to the land use boards. In that way, I think for some reason this thing stalls out for something, because I will stay on it, I will attend to this process. If for some reason I see some stall, Dave, you'll be the first person I call, and then I'll call you, Bonnie, and we'll talk about what we may or may not need to do. Does that give you a little peace of mind?
Yes, that does. Thank you. The last thing that I wanted to say is I went on the tour that the natural area gave. They had a really wonderful young historical botanist from Rutgers, and he walked everybody around the park and he pointed out the invasives. He pointed out the trees that were of value, and it was so educational. I know a lot because it's my thing, but I learned so much. So I would really, I said to the Fergusons that are the head of the committee, did you invite the Shade Tree Commission? And they're like, oh, no, we should have. So make sure that you go on the next one. It's really wonderful. I
would love to attend a walking tour of some any part of town really, and hear a tree expert kind of walk us through what we have. That would
It's
be
also it's enlightening and horrifying of the invasives that are in the natural area. I mean, it's really a problem, and we're gonna lose it if we don't do something about it. So I strongly urge you to get involved in that. So and I'm
Goats.
finished.
Waiting on the goats. Bonnie, you were tasked with the goats last week or last
The
month.
goats, I know. Yeah, the goats. Yeah, I actually did ask the Rutgers student. I dragged the poor Rutgers student over to the area on Third Street, the walkthrough. I said, can you just come look? And he said, yeah, this is a big deal. But you know what he said is that the brush area, he said, if you're chewing up brush up there, that's going to, of course, spread into that whole, that's what happened, is all that ivy and all those invasives were chewed up and it just funneled
Seeded.
down into that area. So it's kind of a problem. I don't even know if the goats could eat all that up, but anyway, it'd be a good project to get involved with the natural area.
Yeah, the invasives, it's unfortunate, like that does not have a home, unfortunately. But we're trying to get the word out, and I appreciate, how some homeowners are starting to take it more seriously, and that's a start.
And Bonnie,
Thank you all. Sorry.
I would love to have a conversation with you just generally about your thoughts on natives and maybe alternatives for the the Quonsons in the future.
I would love to have it.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll get your number and give you a ring.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Hey, thank you all for your patience. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Barney. Any other members of the public want to contribute tonight? Going once.
No other raised hands.
All righty. Anybody else have any questions, comments, or concerns that we want to bring up tonight? Awesome.
Just a quick question. Did if we did want to submit something for the next agenda, should we just email the group? I wanted to just talk with Leah about something, but then maybe put it forth for the next meeting.
All right, just email Christy. She can put it on.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks.
All right, guys. Well, again, really, really solid stuff. Continuing to move forward, and the point was made tonight that it's probably the fastest we've moved in a number of years, and with a lot of stuff and a lot of robust conversations on the agenda. So good stuff, guys. Be proud of what we're working on here. So, because I am. So, all right, guys. We will reconvene next month. Excellent job.
Christy, are you
Thank
in
you.
tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, I'll come find you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Not all.